Good evening. My name is Duncan, and I am immortal. I was born in the year 1592, a time of candlelight and quiet, of feathered ink and whispered secrets between stone walls and ancient trees. Since then, I've wandered through centuries, 400 years of watching the world change, of seeing sunrises from 1,000 different places, of listening to languages evolve and hearts stay the same. I've dined with philosophers, walked through cities that no longer exist, stood beneath the stars beside kings and poets. And now I tell stories, not of battles or sorrow, but of the soft, forgotten moments, the kind that live on when all else fades. Each night, I invite you to let the weight of the day slip from your shoulders, to rest, to breathe, to listen. If you haven't yet, I gently invite you to subscribe and tap the bell so that the next story finds you at just the right moment, when sleep begins to call. And if there's something you'd like to hear about, a time, a place, a person, leave me a comment. I may have been there. I may remember it still. Now, turn off the light. Lie back. Let your body sink into the bed. Soften your jaw. Unclench your hands. Let your breath fall into a slow, quiet rhythm. You are safe here. You are warm. And sleep is near. Close your eyes and listen. Tonight, let me tell you the story of the evening I once spent dining with Isaac Newton. The candlelight flickers softly in the warm, oak-paneled room, casting long shadows that dance gently across ancient tomes and brass instruments scattered on heavy wooden tables. Outside, the faint rustle of leaves whispers of centuries past, while inside, the quiet crackle of a fireplace hums like a heartbeat. Tonight, you are not merely a spectator. You are my guest, invited to a dinner unlike any other. Across from you, at this table bathed in amber glow, sits a man whose mind shaped our understanding of the cosmos, Sir Isaac Newton. The air between you hums with the unspoken weight of questions older than civilization itself. We begin not with the clatter of cutlery or the warmth of the roast before us, but with an idea as elusive and as constant as the stars. Time. Why does time fascinate us so deeply? Is it because it slips away from our grasp like sand through fingers? Or because it shapes everything we know? Our memories, our hopes, the very rhythm of life. Newton, with his penetrating gaze, pondered this mystery long before the word relativity ever entered the language. Tonight, I invite you to lean in close and listen. Together, we will explore how Newton conceived of time, how his ideas both comforted and constrained the human mind, and how those early thoughts laid the groundwork for profound disputes that echo through physics and philosophy today. To Isaac Newton, time was like an invisible river flowing steadily, regardless of what lies within or upon it. Imagine a great, unyielding clock tower standing tall at the heart of the universe. Its pendulum swings with perfect precision, indifferent to the chaos below. Newton called this concept absolute time, time that passes uniformly and universally, the same for all observers, in all places. He wrote of it as flowing equably, without relation to anything external, a kind of eternal backdrop against which all motion and change unfold. Why was this comforting? Because it offered a fixed, reliable framework to measure motion and change. Without absolute time, the laws of physics, which Newton formulated with elegant precision, might seem unstable, chaotic. He imagined the universe as a grand clockwork mechanism, planets orbiting with mathematical certainty, apples falling predictably from trees. Time was the metronome, ensuring the cosmic symphony stayed in tune. Take a moment to absorb this. Newton's universe was one of order and certainty. Time marched forward in perfect steps, unaffected by the will of any observer. It was a silent witness, impartial and unwavering. And yet, as you close your eyes, consider this quiet unease beneath the surface, a question that gnaws gently but persistently. Is time really so simple? Newton's absolute time was widely accepted for centuries, shaping not just science, but the very way we understood existence. But even in his era, whispers of doubt circled. What if time did not flow the same for everyone? Imagine, for a moment, two observers. One sits quietly in a peaceful garden. The other races through the stars aboard a blazing comet. According to Newton, their clocks should tick in perfect harmony, their experiences of time identical. But what if somehow that were not the case? This idea, barely whispered in Newton's time, would eventually shake the foundations of physics. To grasp the significance of Newton's conception, we must remember the world in which he lived, a world where chaos was to be tamed by reason, where mathematics held the key to understanding nature's secrets. Newton's laws of motion and universal gravitation relied on time as an absolute measure. His entire mathematical framework demanded a steady, unchanging clock. It was this idea of time that allowed humanity, for the first time, to predict the movements of planets, to calculate the trajectory of comets, and to understand gravity as a universal force. This absolute time created a deep sense of order and control. It suggested the universe was a vast machine, ticking in perfect sync, something comforting to a mind yearning for certainty amid the turmoil of a rapidly changing world. Yet, beneath this clarity lurked paradoxes that Newton's theory did not resolve. For example, if time flows uniformly, why does our experience of time sometimes stretch or compress? Why can a moment of joy feel fleeting, while a minute of pain seems endless? More disturbingly, if time is truly absolute, how do we reconcile it with the strange phenomena hinted at by light, motion, and gravity? Imagine now that night's dinner, you seated across from Newton, the room filled with the scent of spiced wine and roasted game, the gentle flicker of candlelight illuminating his thoughtful face. He leans forward, voice low, eyes steady. You see, he might say, time is the stage on which the great drama of nature unfolds. Without it, motion and change become meaningless. Yet, there is more to time than just the ticking of a clock. You pause, feeling the weight of that thought, the room growing still as the fire crackles. The conversation is not just about physics. It is about the very nature of reality, about how we place ourselves within it. Tonight's journey begins here, with Newton's absolute time, a concept that is simple, yet infinitely profound. It is the first step toward understanding why time is one of the most puzzling and deeply human mysteries. As you listen, allow yourself to step into this quiet room, to feel the centuries fall away, and to see the universe through the eyes of a man who dared to measure the cosmos with nothing but his mind, a candle, and an unwavering belief in order. As the last traces of your meal fade, the conversation gently moves from the comfort of Newton's steady clock to the strange and wondrous ways time would later reveal itself, ways that bend, stretch, and sometimes even reverse the flow we thought was certain. But for now, rest in this moment of calm certainty. Take a deep breath. Feel the slow, steady pulse of time, as Newton knew it, flowing like an invisible river through all things. And when you are ready, we will move forward into the heart of time's greatest mysteries. Imagine sitting by a window, watching leaves fall gently to the ground. To you, the movement is slow and measured. But what if someone else, traveling near the speed of light, watched those same leaves? Would they see time in the same way? This question strikes at the heart of a fundamental debate that would echo for centuries. Is time truly absolute, flowing the same everywhere? Or is it relative, changing depending on who or what is observing it. Newton's concept of absolute time suggested a universal clock ticking steadily throughout the cosmos. But even as he laid the foundation, the seeds of doubt were sown. What if time was not a single, immutable river, but a fluid and personal experience, shifting with the observer? The idea of relative time was revolutionary. It suggested that two observers moving differently might measure different durations between the same two events. This notion unsettled the very fabric of certainty Newton had worked so hard to build. Consider this. In everyday life, we take for granted that a minute lasts the same for everyone. But when velocities approach the speed of light or gravity becomes extreme, this assumption breaks down. This is not mere speculation. Centuries later, Einstein's theories would confirm that time dilates. It stretches and contracts depending on motion and gravity. Yet, the tension between absolute and relative time remains a profound philosophical puzzle. If time is relative, what anchors reality? How do we agree on when events occur? The implications ripple beyond physics into our understanding of existence itself. Is there a now that is the same for all? Or is each consciousness living in its own unique present? As you ponder this, imagine yourself dining with Newton again and gently raising these questions. How would he respond to the idea that time might be personal, elastic, even illusory? He might smile wistfully and remind you of the elegance and necessity of absolute time for making sense of the cosmos. But perhaps, beneath that exterior, a curiosity flickers, an awareness that the universe might be far stranger than even he imagined. Take a deep breath and feel the mystery unfold. In this quiet room, between the clinking of glasses and the soft murmur of conversation, the dispute between absolute and relative time is not just academic. It is a meditation on how we anchor ourselves to reality. And as the evening deepens, the discussion will carry us even further. From the clockwork certainty of Newtonian time to the bending, weaving fabric of space-time itself. As the evening unfolds and the wine settles into a warm glow, our conversation drifts to one of the most profound puzzles of time, the nature of the present moment itself. What does it really mean to say, now? We live our lives anchored to the present. It is the only moment we ever truly experience. Yet, when we try to pin down what now means, the certainty begins to slip like mist through our fingers. Philosophers have wrestled with this mystery for centuries. Two competing views emerge: presentism, the belief that only the present is real, and eternalism, the idea that past, present, and future all coexist equally. Newton's view, rooted in absolute time, leans toward presentism. He saw time as a flowing river, carrying moments from future to present, and then onward to the past, where only the present has true existence. Imagine standing on a riverbank, watching the current glide past your feet. Each drop of water is a fleeting now, moving downstream, gone before you can grasp it. But eternalism challenges this picture. It suggests the universe is more like a vast landscape where all moments, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously, just as all points on a map are equally real. This is not merely abstract philosophy. Einstein's theory of relativity implies that simultaneity is relative. Different observers may disagree on what counts as now. This unsettling idea means that your present moment and mine might not align in any absolute sense. Take a moment to breathe this in. The now you experience might be unique to you, a sliver of reality moving through a broader tapestry that contains all moments. If the past and future exist just as tangibly as the present, what does that mean for free will, memory, and change? Are we travelers moving along a predetermined path? Or is the future still open and undetermined? Newton, ever the seeker of order, might have found eternalism unsettling. The idea that the future is already there, waiting like a shadow cast before us, seems to undermine the flow of cause and effect that his laws describe. Yet, as our dinner progresses, you sense a flicker of fascination in his eyes. After all, science is not static. It evolves with each question asked, with every boundary tested. These competing views, presentism and eternalism, invite us to consider time not as a simple river, but as a far richer, stranger reality. What if time is both flowing and fixed, both immediate and eternal? Such contradictions may feel paradoxical, but they reflect the deep complexity at the heart of existence. Reflect on how this affects your own experience of life. The urgency of a single moment, the weight of memory, the mystery of the future. The present, it seems, is more than a fleeting instant. It is the crossroads where physics and philosophy meet, where Newton's ordered cosmos touches the strange and beautiful unknown. As we prepare to move on, the fire's glow dims softly, and the room feels hushed, expectant. Ahead lies even deeper inquiry into time's relation to space and the strange fabric that binds them. For now, rest with the thought that now is not as simple as it seems. It is a gateway into the enigma of time itself, The flicker of candlelight dances across the wooden walls as the conversation shifts gently, weaving from the elusive now into the very stage upon which all moments unfold: space itself. Newton imagined space as an absolute, unchanging arena, a vast, infinite container in which all events take place, like a perfectly still ocean that holds the waves, yet remains untouched itself. This concept seemed intuitive for centuries. We picture ourselves moving through space, as if across a grand, fixed map, where positions are absolute and independent of the objects within it. But this absolute space is no mere backdrop. It is a fundamental entity, existing independently even when nothing occupies it. Imagine standing in an empty field beneath a boundless sky. Newton's space exists even if you close your eyes, disappear from the field, or the stars themselves vanish. Yet, this idea invites deep questions. How can space exist without anything in it? If space is absolute, what does it mean for motion or rest? Newton famously reasoned that true motion can only be defined relative to this absolute space, not just relative to other bodies. His famous bucket experiment, where water's surface curves as the bucket spins, was designed to prove that rotation is absolute. It can be measured against space itself, not just relative to nearby objects. This challenged the relational view held by philosophers like Leibniz, who argued that space is nothing more than the relation between objects. Without objects, space would have no meaning. Imagine a universe emptied of stars, planets, and dust. Would space still be there? Or would it dissolve into nothingness, simply the sum of relations between objects? Such questions ripple into philosophy and physics alike, questioning the nature of reality's fabric. Centuries later, Einstein's theories would upend Newton's absolute space, showing space and time as interwoven and dynamic, influenced by matter and energy. But during our quiet dinner, Newton would likely defend his conception with steady calm, confident in its logical clarity. And yet, beneath his reasoned voice, there is a hint of wonder. For even he glimpsed that the universe holds deeper mysteries than any fixed stage can contain. As you sit across from him, consider, what does it mean for space itself to be alive with possibility, shaped by what it holds, and shaping it in turn? Take a deep breath and feel the weight of this vast question settle softly. Space, it seems, is not just emptiness, but an active participant in the cosmic dance. And as the candle flickers low, our discussion prepares to step further toward the nature of gravity itself, the invisible thread binding space, time, and matter. The fire crackles gently, casting flickering shadows that seem to move with the rhythm of the universe itself. Our conversation turns now to gravity, that mysterious force Newton famously described as an invisible hand pulling the apple from the tree, yet one that continues to puzzle minds centuries later. Newton's law of universal gravitation revolutionized science. He revealed that every mass attracts every other mass with a force proportional to their size and inversely proportional to the square of their distance. Simple, elegant, and extraordinarily powerful. But beneath its straightforward formula lies a profound mystery. How does gravity act across empty space without any visible connection? Imagine two dancers on a vast, empty stage. How do they pull toward each other without strings, signals, or visible bonds? This invisible attraction was, in Newton's day, accepted as a spooky action at a distance, a phrase that would only gain notoriety with Einstein's quantum musings centuries later. Newton never claimed to understand gravity's essence, only that it worked predictably. He famously said, "Hypotheses non fingo." I feign no hypotheses. The stage was set for future thinkers to explore the deeper nature of gravity. Fast forward to Einstein, who transformed gravity from a mysterious force into the curvature of space and time itself. According to general relativity, masses bend the fabric of space-time, and this bending directs the path of objects, what we perceive as gravity. Imagine a heavy ball placed on a stretched rubber sheet, causing it to sag. Smaller balls, rolling nearby, naturally spiral toward the heavy ball, not because of invisible pulling, but because of the curved shape of the sheet. This insight united gravity with the very nature of space and time, revealing them as a dynamic, living tapestry. Yet, even Einstein's picture opens new questions. What is space-time made of? Can gravity be quantized? Is there a particle for gravity? A graviton? And how does gravity reconcile with the quantum world of atoms and energy fields, where uncertainty reigns? In our quiet dinner, Newton listens with that calm, knowing gaze. He might not grasp the full quantum mystery, but he feels the unfolding wonder. Gravity, the force that binds galaxies and holds us to Earth, is more than a law. It is a bridge between the tangible and the mysterious. It challenges us to rethink the very fabric of reality, to question what connects the stars and what holds us all together. Take a moment now to feel gravity's gentle pull, grounding you, yet inviting your mind to soar beyond the familiar. This invisible thread weaves through the cosmos, linking moments, masses, and mysteries. And as our conversation draws toward its close, we prepare to explore the final idea: time's fluidity and its intimate dance with our perception. As the evening deepens, the room grows quieter. The faint ticking of a clock seems to stretch and contract with each breath we take. Our conversation drifts toward time itself, the relentless current we all float upon, yet which remains so elusive, so mutable. Time, Isaac Newton once declared, flows equably without relation to anything external. Absolute, true, and mathematical. Like an invisible river running steadily onward, independent of events, peoples, or perception. It's an idea that comforts and grounds time as a universal clock, ticking the same for all. But as philosophers and scientists have pondered, this notion grows fragile under scrutiny. How do we measure something that slips through our fingers, seen only in change, memory, and expectation? Einstein shattered Newton's vision with his theory of relativity. Time is not universal, but relative, intertwined with space, stretched and compressed by motion and gravity. The ticking clock can slow for a traveler moving near light speed or near a massive star, a cosmic reminder that time bends and flows like the rest of the universe. Yet, even this profound truth brings paradox. If time is relative and fluid, what anchors our experience? Why does time seem to flow forward, never backward? Why does memory cling to the past and anticipation reach toward the future, creating a subjective arrow of time? Philosophers and physicists alike wrestle with these questions. Is the now a fleeting instant or an illusion created by consciousness? Are past and future equally real, or does only the present truly exist? These puzzles speak to the heart of existence. At dinner, Newton, the master of order and reason, listens thoughtfully. He might marvel at how his absolute time becomes a living river, shaped by the cosmos and our minds. He might smile softly, recognizing that the universe's deepest truths often resist our neatest equations. As you breathe in this mystery, allow yourself to drift beyond clocks and calendars. Feel time not as a rigid master, but a gentle guide, a rhythm you can move with rather than against. Pause here and imagine time folding like a delicate origami, infinite yet intimate, connecting your heartbeat with stars' distant pulses. The dance of time is both vast and personal. And with this thought, our evening winds down. The candle burns low, and the quiet hum of the cosmos embraces us. Thank you for sharing this journey through space, time, and mind. When you are ready, gently let the story slip away as sleep takes you by the hand. As the fire in the hearth settled into a quiet rhythm of glowing embers, and the moonlight fell in pale streaks across the wooden floor, Newton and I sat in a silence that felt full, not empty. Some silences are made of distance, others of understanding. I remember turning my gaze toward the flicker of his candle, watching the wax. I remember turning my gaze toward the flicker of his candle, watching the wax slowly sink inward, like a slow breath. Perhaps that was what time truly was. The steady, warm descent of wax, the quiet collapse of light into memory. He looked at me, and almost out of nowhere said, "You know, Duncan, I sometimes wonder what endures longer, ideas or the people who hold them?" I tilted my head, amused by the question. "Well, I've seen both fade," I said softly. Newton smiled, the corners of his eyes gently creasing. "And yet, we keep speaking, keep writing, keep reaching for something." He leaned back, hands folded loosely in his lap, and continued. "When I was a boy," he said, "I spent entire afternoons alone in the orchard. Everyone else thought I was strange, always building something, always pulling things apart. But the truth is, I wasn't searching for answers. I was looking for quiet." There was something in the way he said that, not with regret, but with softness, as though admitting it not to me, but to himself for the first time. "I thought, for many years," he went on, "that discovery would bring clarity. But it doesn't. Discovery only gives you more refined kinds of uncertainty. What truly stays with you is not what you find, but how it makes you feel while you're looking." I nodded slowly. I had seen empires fall, languages disappear, entire cities turned to dust. And still, it was not the knowledge of events that remained with me, but how it had felt to stand in them. The scent of bread in a street market, the sound of a mother's voice calling her child in Latin, the look in someone's eyes just before they chose mercy over vengeance. These things never made it into the history books, but they made it into me. Newton glanced toward the window, where the sky had turned dark blue, that rich, bottomless color that belongs only to deep night. He said nothing for a long time. Then, finally, he spoke in a whisper. "Do you think people truly change, Duncan? Over centuries, I mean." I thought about that for a long time. I thought of the first time I held a musket, and the first time I held a fountain pen. I thought of the young men who once ran toward war, thinking it was glory. and centuries later ran toward knowledge, thinking it was peace. I thought of the laughter in the streets of Florence, the stillness in Kyoto gardens, the sound of jazz under Paris rain. And I said quietly, "No, not really. But I think our reasons deepen, and sometimes that's enough." Newton smiled again, not with triumph, but something gentler, something that understood the long, aching sweetness of time. We didn't speak much after that, just sat, letting the quiet carry what we no longer needed to say. Eventually, the candles burned low, and I took my leave. He walked me to the door, said nothing, only placed a hand on my shoulder for a brief moment, as though acknowledging something in me, or maybe something we shared. And then I stepped back into the night. The stars above were the same as I'd seen centuries before, though perhaps a little colder. The wind tugged gently at my cloak, and the crunch of gravel beneath my boots echoed across the sleepy countryside. I did not sleep that night. Immortality gives you many things: time, memory, perspective. But nights like that, they give you something rarer: stillness. And that, I've learned, is what lingers. Not the discoveries, not the debates, but the stillness between them, and the quiet, human truths that surface when no one is trying to be right. Would you like to hear more stories like this? Then stay close. Next time, perhaps I'll tell you about the man who painted silence, or the woman who taught me how to forget. Until then, close your eyes, let it all drift, and sleep well. I walked for some time that night, boots soft against the damp grass of the countryside. The moon hung low, not quite full, but bright enough to cast long, silvered shadows across the path. I didn't hurry. One doesn't after such a conversation. The breeze tugged gently at my coat, as if to remind me, you're still here, you're still walking, you're still breathing. Sometimes, after evenings like that, the mind doesn't quiet easily. Not because of excitement, but because some words ripple outward, like a stone dropped into still water. Newton's voice, soft and precise, still lingered in my ears. But it wasn't his theories or paradoxes I was thinking of. It was the quiet question behind his gaze. What endures? It's a question that takes different shapes when you've lived as long as I have. At first, in my early years, I thought the answer was memory. If I could remember something clearly, a face, a voice, a day, then it still existed in some way. But time, it wears memory down like rain on stone. Even immortal minds forget. And so I began to write, not to be read, I rarely showed my pages to anyone, but to preserve, to press between the leaves of time those fragile petals of experience. I once lived in a monastery high in the Alps for nearly a decade. Not as a monk, though I wore their robes. I tended bees, simple creatures, ordered, fragile, immensely important. There was an old brother there, Brother Adalbert, nearly blind and so quiet you might think him mute. But once, in the middle of a storm, I found him standing alone outside, arms wide open to the wind. I joined him, and when the thunder broke, he turned to me and said, "Even now, I still don't know what I believe, but I know what feels true." That stayed with me. It wasn't reason. It wasn't science. It wasn't even faith. It was feeling, the strange, private compass that turns us towards certain ideas, certain people, certain acts of kindness or silence. Sometimes I wonder, is that the only true guide we have? Take a moment here. Breathe in and let it go. You don't have to know all the answers. You just have to keep walking. I suppose people think that living forever gives you answers, that with enough time, everything makes sense. But I've found the opposite to be true. The more you see, the more you understand how fragile understanding really is, how little of the world is shaped by certainty, and how much by stories we tell ourselves to keep from falling into silence. There was a girl once, Ailsa, Scotland, early 1600s, a healer's daughter. She knew every plant, every root and leaf by its proper name. She'd walk the forests barefoot in winter, laughing at frost, muttering to foxglove and yew as though they were old friends. We were young, or at least I looked young. She believed I was 23. In truth, I was nearing 50 then, still early in my immortality. I hadn't yet felt the weight of years stack like stones behind the ribs. One evening, we were walking along the edge of a loch. The sky was low, pink with mist. She said something I've never forgotten. She said, "Most people live their lives like they're holding their breath, afraid to breathe in, afraid to leave a mark. But the world wants to be touched, Duncan. That's what it's for." It was the way she said it, not like a philosophy, but like a truth already tested by time. I lost her that winter. Fever. A simple cough turned cruel. And I remember thinking how unfair it was that someone so alive could be snuffed out, while I, the one who never changed, remained. I left Scotland after her death, walked south, then further. That was when I began to ask different questions. Not, why do we die? But, what does it mean to be here at all? What changes us? What do we leave behind? If even our names are forgotten. Centuries later, I returned to that same forest. The lock was still there, a little smaller. The path overgrown. But in one place, just off the trail, wild yew trees had grown into a quiet circle, the kind that feels older than memory. And I remembered her voice. The world wants to be touched. There's something strange about places like that. It's not memory exactly. It's more like resonance. Like a place remembers being loved, even if it can't say by whom. I think Newton would have understood that in his own way. For all his mathematics, for all his law of gravitation, he knew the pull of things unseen, the weight of the intangible. We spoke of time, but under it, there was something else neither of us said aloud. The fear of forgetting, of becoming untethered. There's a silence that comes when you've lived long enough. Not emptiness, just a kind of stillness. You stop needing to prove anything. You stop needing to win arguments. Instead, you begin to listen differently. To the wind, to the way a person hesitates before speaking, to what remains unspoken in a room. Sometimes, that's where the truth hides. I paused by a river that night, let my fingers drift across the surface. It was cold, swift, and it reminded me of something Newton had said just hours before. Perhaps time isn't a river at all. Perhaps we are the river, and time is the landscape we pass through. He'd smiled after saying it, like a man who'd just broken his own rule, said something poetic despite himself. But I liked it, because in that image, there is motion, there is change, there is freedom. And yet, even a river leaves behind stones, polished smooth by passing years. I've always loved places like that. Places where people gather, if only for a moment. Strangers pressed together by rain or wine or the need to forget the day. You see, immortality is not a curse. Not exactly. But it is a kind of echo. You are always adjacent. Never quite inside the moment. Never quite able to stay. And yet, in those moments, by the fire, among strangers, I've felt something I can only describe as home. When I left the inn, the road was empty again. Mist was curling low across the fields, and every step felt like it belonged to another century. And I remembered something Newton had asked me just before I left. "What does it feel like," he said, "to live without an end?" I didn't answer then. I only smiled and said, "Perhaps someday I'll find out." But now, walking beneath the stars, I'll try to answer. It feels like standing still, while the world moves through you, like being a shoreline, worn, weathered, while wave after wave of lives rise and fall against you. You fall in love, over and over, knowing it will end. You lose friends to age, to illness, to time itself. You learn languages that no one speaks anymore. You remember cities that now lie underwater or in ruin. And you carry it, not as a burden, but as a kind of quiet knowing, the way a tree carries its rings. Each life, each loss, each joy, another line etched beneath the bark. There is sorrow in it, yes, but also beauty. Because when you live long enough, you begin to see how everything is connected, how every person carries echoes of another. I met a young soldier once, in 1916, whose laugh reminded me of a farmer I knew in the 1700s. He had no idea, of course, but I did, and it made me kinder. That's what time does in the end. Not just stretch you, but soften you. You stop asking, why does this hurt? And start asking, how can I carry it better? You stop demanding meaning and begin to notice wonder instead. A moth beating its wings against a lantern, a letter found in an attic, the first apple of the season. These things, they stay, not forever, but long enough to matter. And maybe that's enough. As I walked on, the sky began to lighten. Just a hint, the faintest silver brushing the edge of night. And I thought of Newton, alone in his study, candle low, quill in hand, still asking questions, still turning the world in his mind. I don't know if he ever found the answers he wanted, but I do know this. Sometimes the asking is the point. Sometimes just sitting with the question quietly, without rushing toward an answer, is what makes us human. So if you're still awake, dear listener, take a breath. Let it out slow. You don't have to understand everything. You don't have to hold on so tightly. The night is long, and you are not alone in it. I'll be here, always walking, always watching, always remembering. Until next time, good night.